we are so close to being able to do this trip without charging, but the range the car is estimating left keeps jumping up and down compared to the actual distance. So I don't know if I can actually trust it, but we don't have far left. Less than 60 kilometers to our destination with 9% stated charge. Are we gonna stop and charge up here, abort this test, or are we gonna YOLO it all the way into Bergen? The task of going 500 kilometers in an electric car doesn't seem that outrageous, especially considering the low speeds on Norwegian country roads. And me attempting to do this in the new upgraded Hongqi E-HS9 Exclusive Plus with a usable battery capacity of 109 kilowatt hours almost seems like child's play. But that is before you look at the E-HS9 and how big and non-aerodynamic it is. The E-HS9 is the antithesis to the Tesla Model 3. Large, big, heavy, square, and tries to brute force range with an enormous battery. And then we have the route. Sure, Norwegian country roads have low speed limits, but it being October, the temperature is also very low. Our route isn't something to frown upon either, because we will be climbing to an elevation of almost 1,300 meters to cross the Scandinavian Alps. We may encounter snow and icy roads. At first, this does seem like an easy task, but at second glance, this may be a tall order for the Chinese Rolls-Royce. Before we continue this epic journey from eastern to western Norway, I just want to give a huge thanks to today's video sponsor, Elton, the most awesome charging app if you live in Norway, Sweden, Finland, or Denmark, because one charging app with one charging interface and one payment method lets you charge at almost all charge point operators in all of these countries. So if you want the best charging app, the easiest charging experience while traveling in or between any of these countries, go to the link in the description box down below and download the Elton charging app from there. I've talked about this multiple times before, and that is how quiet and comfortable the driving experience in the Hongqi E-HS9 is. And this Exclusive Plus version with the new 120 kilowatt hour battery pack is just as comfortable and as quiet as earlier versions of this car I have driven. It is impressively serene and comfortable. The seats are nice, you have great visibility, and you have a nice high driving position and a lot of room here in the front cabin. It really is a luxurious experience from the top shelf, except it isn't, because where this car is good in the way it drives, a lot of the other things here is terrible, to be quite honest, and feels unpolished, unfinished, and the fact that this car has been on the market for a few years now is just unacceptable. So first off, the way the adaptive cruise control works, and this has to do with programming, but it is super annoying. So you set the speed to whatever you set it to, and then as long as the road is straight, it keeps the speed. But once you have a little bit of steering angle, it reduces the speed severely. In the previous video, I did a range test. I was driving 120 kilometers an hour, and this motorway was just turning slightly, and then it reduces the speed down to like 104 kilometers. That is just annoying. And it's not even smooth about it. It's jerky, and I don't think it does it with the ECU. I think there's some kind of really simple way it does it with a relay that's behind the dashboard, because every time it brakes, you can hear a clicking sound from that relay behind the dashboard. You know, a relay that you could hear in something like a Volkswagen Golf 2 from the late 1980s. That's what it sounds like. So that's not acceptable. And then you have the rest of the interface here, which is fine to use, but Android Auto hasn't been working for 2 hours. I've turned the car on and off multiple times. I've left the car, I've turned my phone on and off, and it doesn't want to work. So I'm now on Bluetooth audio, and I had a call with a friend I'm using the built-in navigation system, which doesn't have any route planning. And I called a friend, and the interface for the call took up the whole screen. I couldn't even go back and find the map while you're driving. So you can't multitask, you can't talk on the phone and navigate at the same time. Yeah, I don't know why they do it that way. And now also, like, yeah, this cruise control is set to 90 kilometers an hour, but because the road is turning, we're down to 73. That is insane and not acceptable. But yeah, this video isn't about how this car drives. It's about getting to Bergen, driving 500 kilometers without charging. And so far, it doesn't look good. Average consumption after 90 kilometers and over an hour on the road, 27.3 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So we're far from our target, which has to be down towards 24 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. But we are climbing in elevation, and we really don't know before we get to our halfway point and a little beyond that, because at our halfway point, we're going to be at an elevation of about 1,200 meters plus. But then 30-40 kilometers after, we're going to be down to sea level again, and we should have recuperated a lot of that lost energy, and we should have a better picture of if we're going to be able to make it or not. But it doesn't look right for this Hongqi E-HS9. Okay guys, I'm going to show you something pretty insane. We're currently at 1,200 meters above sea level, and as you guys can see, there is a lot of snow and ice here. And take a look at this. Take a look at this spectacular view. We're going to jump up here. Look at this, look at this. And take a look at this. Take a look at this insane view, guys. I was not expecting it to be this much snow and ice already now in mid-October. I'm going to try not to fall, but check out this insane view here in Hardangervidda, the mountain pass between Bergen and Oslo. Wow. So let's hop over to the car. I'm going to show you something else which is also pretty interesting. Yeah, it's super slippery here. Ice on the asphalt. Okay, so take a look at this. So our average consumption now is actually pretty high at 28.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. We've covered 252.9 kilometers, and according to the car, we have 199 kilometers left to go. But take a look at down here. 34% state of charge left and 128 kilometers of range. But we are, as I said, at an elevation of 1,200 meters. So we are at the absolute high point of our trip now, and also the high point of our consumption. I think if we're able to do a targeted consumption of around 24 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, we may be able to make it to Bergen without charging. But that is a very tall order. But we're now going to drop in the next 50 kilometers. We're going to drop down to sea level, and the temperatures are going to go from about 1 degree Celsius now to probably around 10 degrees Celsius. So I'm hoping once we get down there, we're going to have a little bit better gauge of what our actual range is going to be and if we'll be able to make it to Bergen. We're now at the bottom of, well, not the bottom of the fjord, we're down at the fjord here in Eidfjord from the top of the mountain, about 40 kilometers that way. And it's mild. We went from 1 degree Celsius to about 11, 12 degrees Celsius now. And I'm gonna turn around the camera, guys, to show you guys this view, which is completely different than the one we had just a little while ago. Yeah, this German cruise ship, Ida, or yes, German, but it says Genoa, but it says ida.de. This German cruise ship is, yeah, obstructing a little bit of the view, but still, guys, this is a very beautiful place at the inlet here in Eidfjord, or not the inlet, we're at like all the way inside the fjord here. And they even have mosquitoes here. My God, we went from like winter to spring or to fall in a very short amount of time. Look at these cool, yeah, these cool wooden buildings here. And yeah, this beautiful fjord. But I mean, the cruise ship kind of puts it into perspective just how big and large the nature is here. But we came from the top over there, about 40 kilometers. And let's hop back to the car and check out what our consumption is now, because I'm a little bit more optimistic now than I was just 25 minutes ago. It's so weird that it's suddenly much milder now. Check this out, 11 degrees Celsius now. That is so weird. Okay, our average consumption is now down to 25.2 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And we have 150 kilometers left and 110 kilometers of range left. So that means we have a buffer about 40 kilometers, but I'm hoping that this milder weather, lower speeds, and we're gonna have flat terrain into Bergen mostly, will give us hope of being able to make it there. As we were moving our way westward, getting closer and closer to Bergen, it getting darker and darker outside, it actually seemed that the flatter terrain, milder temperatures, and lower speeds worked in our advantage. The gap between the actual distance and the range of the car started to get smaller and smaller, and it looked pretty good. Until we got close to Voss, and then suddenly the range just plummeted compared to the distance. That gap of minus 40 kilometers in Eidfjord had become even bigger. We are so close to being able to do this trip without charging, but the range the car is estimating left keeps jumping up and down compared to the actual distance. So I don't know if I can actually trust it, but we don't have far left. Less than 60 kilometers to our destination with 9% stated charge. Are we gonna stop and charge up here, abort this test, or are we gonna YOLO it all the way into Bergen? You made it, and so did I. I actually made it to Bergen with one charging stop. Yeah, wasn't able to make it all the way to Bergen without stopping to charge once. But we were so close to being able to make this trip all the way to Bergen without having to stop to charge. Our buffer at most was at minus 17 kilometers. Yes, minus is in the negative, and minus 17 kilometers doesn't sound very encouraging. But if I was driving this car on a route where I'm super familiar, like on my long trip test, or in a car where I know the exact buffer below zero, I could have been able to YOLO it. And in other cars, 17 kilometers may have been doable below 0% stated charge. But between here and Bergen, not a lot of charging options. So yeah, I didn't want to risk it being stranded in the middle of nowhere. So I stopped and charged here in Dal, less than 60 kilometers from our destination, but with a only little bit less than 40 kilometers of range. So the buffer before I stopped to charge now was about 21 kilometers. So not encouraging, but not bad. Not bad. So yeah, that's how far I tried and dared to travel in the Hongqi E-HS9 in today's test. If it would have been a little bit warmer, I think this car would have been able to make it. If I did this test in the same temperature and conditions as in that Mercedes EQS SUV in summer, I think this car also would have been able to make it all the way to Bergen without stopping to charge. But yeah, this is how far we got. So guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please drop me a thumbs up down below. And for more car content, as always, please subscribe. See you guys later and goodbye.